joining us. So I'll let you take it away.
Sounds great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you all to the WRMC August Speaker Series event. If this is your first time joining us, we're glad to have you. And for those of you returning, welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Gaida. I'm the Business Development Manager for WRMC here in Denver. And also joining us today is Jack Thuitt, our VP of Business Development. Jack, give us a wave. So these exclusive speaker series events are really designed to bring industry-leading experts to you all, our board members and managers. They offer professional insights, best practices, and an opportunity for you all to ask questions to these industry experts. Our speakers are carefully selected for their understanding of the unique challenges and opportunities that boards and managers are facing. So we hope that it's very tailored content and addresses your needs specifically. So before we dive in, I just want to mention we're recording the session. So it'll be available on the WRMC YouTube channel, along with other webinars in this series. So you can always go back and reference. And our goal is really to ensure that every board member and manager, of course, has the resources they need to lead their communities effectively. So that's really the vision behind these events, and we appreciate you making the time to be here. So that brings us to today's event, Pre-Construction, Modern Project Planning. And joining us today is Ryan Toney and Natalie Tuccio from Kennedy Richter Construction, also known as KRC. Ryan, Natalie, how are you guys?
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, for being here. So the format is similar to previous events. Natalie and Ryan will present, and we'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. If you do have questions that come up and you want to remember them, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of the session. And then I also wanted to share with you all that Ryan and Natalie got creative in their presentation, and they have bonus questions for you all. So if you're the first to answer correctly, go ahead and type your answer into the chat and you could win an Amazon gift card. So stay alert, be ready to type. And with that, Ryan and Natalie, I'll turn it over to you guys to get started.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Jack, for having us. I want to commend you guys on putting together programs like this. Not a lot of management companies do this, and I think it's a tremendous value, and we're really excited to be here tonight. So who the heck is Kennedy Richter Construction? We'll start with that so you know what kind of qualifies us to be talking to you guys tonight. So we actually specialize in HOA and commercial reconstruction. We have offices in Colorado, Texas, Florida, North and South Carolina. We're unique. We are owner-operated, been around since 2016. We really specialize in large, complex projects, high-rise, high-risk repairs. We're building envelope specialists. We do decks, patios, balconies on a large scale. We do waterproofing, and we do construction defect repair. So tonight we're talking about pre-construction, which is modern project planning. Anytime you hear the word pre-construction, it's just a fancy word for planning. So we're going to give you an introduction to it. We're going to walk you through the key steps. We're going to talk to you about the project logistics that have a cost implication when you're planning a project. That's safety, quality, schedule, communication. And then we're going to wrap it up with the benefits of pre-construction. So as Michelle said, we've got bonus questions. We are giving away money tonight, Amazon gift cards. And so it's really important, don't type your answer into the Q&A, type it into the chat. You're going to see a slide like this, and it's going to say, get ready, bonus question coming. Get ready to type the first correct answer, and Jack's going to monitor that for us. We'll get an Amazon gift card emailed from me tomorrow. So be paying attention, and again, type it into the chat function. So what is pre-construction? Pre-construction is a modern approach to planning a project that ensures it's going to be functional and financially viable for the HOA. It proactively identifies obstacles and cost impacts before the project starts. This is so important, and it really does set the stage for a smoother, more efficient project. So what are you going to learn tonight? You're going to learn that this is a transparent planning process. Priority work within a budget is focused on. The goal is to reduce the risk of change orders. You're going to be left with a project that works for you and can be financially achievable. all along the way, we're putting a plan into place to minimize resident and tenant impact. So when should we use pre-construction? Well, you've got a scope that's undefined. Maybe you've got a long list of deferred maintenance and you don't know where to start. Anytime you're seeking a loan or a special assessment to fund a project, it is so important to have it dialed in on all of the complex logistics and down to the penny. And also if you have a large complex project or construction defect repair project. And so that's what we're talking about tonight, is we're talking about really complex projects that have a long list of scopes that need to be developed into a project that can be done. Now, it doesn't always make sense to use pre-construction. If you've got a scope that's clearly defined and you know that if you put it out to 3 bidders, they're going to pretty much come back with the same thing, you don't need to spend all this time doing pre-construction. If you've got a single scope project like painting, concrete, or asphalt, it is fine to go out and just seek 3 bids. Or if you've got just a project that's smaller in size, it probably doesn't make sense to spend all this time planning. So it's not always applicable, but where it is and what we're talking tonight are these large complex projects where we're going to have to seek some sort of funding option or a construction defect repair project where we've got to stay within those settlement funds. So we're going to jump into a case study. Sunny Haven HOA, yes, we changed the name to protect the community. They had a lot going on. Oh man, they had life safety structural guardrail and awning attachments. They had building envelope concerns, windows, roofs, decks, structural, civil. Just a lot of different critical projects that needed to be prioritized and completed. And they really didn't have a scope. They didn't know where the work needed to be taking place, how much the quantities. And so we ran them through pre-construction. And Ryan's going to just show you some of the issues that they were facing. And then we'll tell you how we put a plan into place around it using pre-construction.
Thanks, Nat. So what we're talking about, just want to give you some visual examples of some of the conditions that they had out there. The beams that you can see here that are on the deck, supporting the decks, those are temporary posts underneath those beams because the beams were not bearing on anything except for exterior sheathing, which if you're familiar with construction is pretty shocking. In some cases we found a single stud pack inside the wall cavity. So we knew that there were some structural issues to these decks. They actually became the highest priority on this project. The guardrail attachments in conjunction with those were not attached properly. So in many cases, again, we had these bolts that were fastened through the base plates and through the wall plates of these guardrails, and they're just going into sheathing or just decking when we have those 3rd and 4th floor decks. So pretty high level life safety concerns for these particular conditions.
Oh, sorry, I tried to click. It's my clicker. Sorry.
The awning attachments, again, so we had a number of bolts that were not properly attached to structure. They were just going into sheathing. Some of them were missing when they were intended to hit structure. They actually missed it in the plates. And then also the plates were not waterproofed properly. So what we were seeing is water getting in behind the water-resistant barrier system, starting to exhibit itself inside the units. But the biggest issue here is we've got a very heavy awning attached to the building. And if enough of those bolts come loose, it would come crashing down. So again, high priority items. This is a life safety issue. We're not just talking about, residents, but also pedestrians, passersby. And the picture on the left, you can see in that photo, there was an access to the garage where we had some of those awnings. So again, we've got to make sure that everything was attached properly. Those were just some of the conditions that we encountered on this particular project. Additionally, on the next slide, please, Natalie. A number of water-resistant barrier issues. So WRB, you're going to hear a lot of acronyms today. So if you have questions about that, just type it into the chat. But water-resistant barrier is the most common element, the last line of defense that building exteriors have before it actually hits exterior sheathing on a building or exterior structure behind that sheathing. So in these cases, we had a lot of reverse lap, so the integration was improper on the water-resistant barrier. We also had a number of places where they used the wrong material. So compatibility between materials is a big issue, especially if you're in some of those warmer climates. On siding projects or projects that have exterior siding, we've seen some products start to melt behind the siding, so improper self-adhered membrane flashing. So then that would exhibit itself by what looks like tar coming out from behind the siding. But in this case, it was improperly lapped water-resistant barrier. One of the other conditions we had on this project was that the clearance from hard surface to exterior cladding, it was all the way down tight to the concrete. Most of these products that are installed on buildings nowadays have a minimum clearance requirement, anywhere from 2 to 6 inches, depending upon what it's adjacent to. So in this case, we had the sheathing down tight to the concrete. We also had the stone down tight to the concrete. And what that allows to happen is anytime we have snow buildup in Colorado, for those of you in southern markets, not really applicable, but we get snow buildup, and some of that exterior sheathing just wicks that water right up into it. In this particular picture, it's a post there. So enough water gets in there and it just starts to saturate that wood and that structure, and eventually really compromises the structure. Diverter flashing, if you've got any low roofs on any of your projects or any of your properties, you may notice some diverter flashing. This happens when we have a low roof situation and you have a perpendicular wall system. The water comes down really adjacent to step flashing, but at the bottom of that step flashing, it should have a kick-out flashing. What we commonly see is the kick-out flashing is not installed properly, does not divert the water into the gutter, instead gets behind the water-resistant barrier and then really deteriorates the system, because in many cases this is a shaded location. So you're going to see faster deterioration at those northern exposure locations. In this case, like this particular picture, it was a northern exposure. We're seeing some rot on some of that exterior sheathing. Really kind of commonality around this particular project. Some easy, high risk, really easy to fix, but high risk items around properties in this property. It was really trip and fall or slip and fall. We get, and a lot of ice buildup in Colorado. Anytime we've got water that's not immediately getting diverted off site. Anytime we've got that's risk for slip and fall. Trip and fall is easier. We can grind some of that concrete, but they had a lot of settling in their concrete because the subgrade on the concrete was not properly prepared. So we're seeing some settlement in some areas, some heaving in other areas, which is not a good combination if the subgrade's not prepared properly. And that's where you're going to see some differential movement of concrete.
So as you can tell, Sunny Haven was dealing with a lot of different really critical projects that they needed to start to figure out, how do we tackle, how can we afford this? So the first step in pre-construction is Ryan creates what's called a pre-construction schedule, and that's what you're seeing here on the screen. And what it does is it details out every task that has to be done before construction can start, before hammers can start swinging. And so for Sunny Haven, we looked at their concerns, we did a site assessment, we said, all right, it's going to take 112 days to plan your project. And pre-construction can take anywhere, depending on the size of the project, from 30 days up to 250 days. But for Sunny Haven, it was 112 days. We told them your anticipated start date for construction is July 24th. And actually, we ended up beating that and starting in June. But this really became the roadmap on how do we plan this project and start to wrap our heads around it. And so from that schedule we just showed you, we pulled out kind of the main milestones and made this chart so that we can just kind of give you the 10,000-foot view on what are the main things that have to take place. And the first one is you have to hire your team. And so pre-construction only works if you have a contractor and an engineer working together. They can't be working off separately in silos. They have to be collaborating together. And so the engineer is the person that designs the project's technical plans. They ensure the safety, the compliance, the functionality. So they're the ones putting together the specifications on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Now, the contractor in pre-construction works in collaboration with them to review their plans, develop cost estimates, schedules, constructability is what they're putting on paper. Can it actually be built? And then they also plan for the efficient and on-budget execution. It's really important that they're collaborating along the way so that we don't have scope gap, we don't have scope creep, and that we're all working towards the common goal, which is creating a project that works for them and is going to be something they can afford. And so how do you hire your team? Well, you would work with your community association manager at Worth Ross. You would write a request for qualifications, an RFQ. You issue it to 3 engineers and 3 general contractors. And you simply ask, what's your firm name? What's your approach to pre-construction, planning our project? What's your capacity? And who's your pre-construction team? And then what is your fee for pre-construction going to be? And we'll talk about fees a little later on. Then you want to level those qualifications and work with your community association manager to coordinate the interviews with the engineers and contractors. We always say you don't have to interview all 3, but maybe pick your top 2. At that point, the community would decide which engineer and which contractor they want to work together with in pre-construction. It's really important that the HOA has individual contracts with the engineering firm and with the general contractor. You don't want the general contractor overseeing the engineer or the engineer overseeing the contractor. You really just don't want the fox watching the hen house. So these would be 2 separate contracts that the HOA would enter into an agreement with. Bonus question, you guys ready? Hopefully I didn't scare anybody. Sorry, you get excited with the bonus questions. All right, get ready to type. Don't type it in the Q&A, type it in the chat. Who makes up the pre-construction team? Jack, you'll have to tell me when we have a winner because I can't see the chat. Who makes up the pre-construction team? Can only do it if you've got these 2 entities. Do we have a winner?
We have a winner. Yes.
Ooh, who do we got?
Jamie. Jamie won it.
Awesome, Jamie. All right, Jamie, I will get your email from Jack and I will send you over an Amazon gift card. Thank you so much and great job. You are correct. Pre-construction only works with a contractor and an engineer collaborating together. Whoops, my clicker is being a little silly. All right, so once you've hired your team, the next step is if you've got a long list of repairs like Sunny Haven had, you need to prioritize those repairs and set your budget so that you can work backwards to understand what can we get done within the money that will be achievable for us. And so what we do at Kennedy Richter is we work with an engineer to create what's called a priority matrix. And Ryan's going to talk to you about what that looks like.
So this document that's assembled is actually really good in protecting your clients because if we do have an engineer providing guidance on what priorities need to take place first, it will be the guiding document thereafter, and it will allow them to just determine what they're going to focus on. So prioritization is usually set up by what are life safety items, what's most critical in putting our clients at the greatest risk. So those are going to be the highest items and scopes that you're going to focus on. The second is going to be immediate building degradation, followed by long-term building degradation. And then falling further down the list are kind of communities' wants. If they've got a sealant project that they're like paint or around windows and doors, they're looking to get done, they kind of fall further down. But in this order is what we really want to focus on: life safety first. So in the example that we had shown, obviously the guardrails and the awning attachments and the deck beams, those needed to be prioritized first. So we go through, we list all of these scopes that were either discovered during site walks, during litigation, however the project came across our plate or your contractor's plate. We give it each one a ranking, and those can actually be either done by the engineer, which is what we want. We also, a lot of times, will add a community priority. So it allows the client to have better input on what they see as their greatest priorities. And they may not be thinking about it in the same fashion that an engineer would, but it is important to have their input. From there, from the ranking, we move over to the rough order magnitude pricing, which is a single line item cost for each one of these scopes. And then following that, it compounds by the running total. And this allows the client to see exactly how much scope they can get captured within their budget. A lot of times we'll encourage clients to design beyond that because on some projects, and we try to do this for every project, we're going to try to find value engineering options. And that's kind of one of the beauties of pre-construction is you're working with an engineer, you're working with a contractor, and working together, they can try to find cheaper options to achieve the exact same design intent or original intent.
All right. My clicker is so funny. So now you know there's a bonus question. If you didn't see that, now you know. Get ready to type it into the chat again. What is considered top priority on a prioritization matrix?
Oh, they were ready. Darnell came in first right away.
Okay. Are we getting multiple answers? I can't see the chat.
Yes, we are.
Yay! Participation. All right. Gold star to everybody, but Amazon gift card to Darnell. Thank you.
Way
Anything
to
life
be
safety.
so fast too. That was
I
awesome.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So from there, the next step after we've hired our team, we've prioritized the repairs and set the budget, the next step is to value analyze the repairs, as Ryan was saying. And so we look at all of the repairs that need to take place, and then we really get surgical on it. And we say, all right, we know we need to repair this. Is there a more cost-effective way that would still yield a high-quality repair result? And if so, how can we do that? What dollars are we saving? And also, can we get more work done if we're saving dollars over here? And so with Sunny Haven, Ryan's going to talk to you about what the initial repair scope was and how he value analyzed it to cut costs by almost 50%.
Yeah, so thanks, Nat. One of the common terms that you hear in construction is PMP, which is perimeter and penetration, or R&R, remove and replace. So in this particular scenario, Sunny Haven had a full removal and replacement called out to be done for all the siding and the stone. Unfortunately, they don't have the budget for that. So in order for us to try to achieve the exact same intent on the design, we went with a perimeter and penetration approach, which means we're pulling back the areas immediately around the fenestrations, which is your windows and your doors, readjusting that flashing, making sure that the integration of the behind the wall flashing is proper in shiplap fashion, so we can make sure that water stays out of the wall system. So again, instead of removing all of the brick, we're only doing immediately around those doors and windows to make sure that the flashing is installed properly. So it's a massive cost savings to the client while achieving the exact same design intent.
Oh, geez.
So this is just an example. So it's kind of hard to see, but the red areas are some of the areas of focus for this particular project. This is the perimeter and penetration approach. Instead of pulling all of the stone, all of the siding off of this project, we're just going to be focusing on the areas where we know water's coming in, as well as the areas where we know are the highest risk. So a lot of those coping caps that you see the red lines going across the rooftop, those coping caps were high risk because we didn't have proper lap over the top of them with self-adhered membrane flashing. Did not integrate properly with the TPO roofing. So we knew there was a high risk area because your roofs, a lot of times, as you guys well know, they're really high risk, and it's usually the easiest one to spot because people have water coming through their ceiling. So it's an easy one to pinpoint early on. And then the lower elevation photos that you see here, those are also flashing or transition details for flashing that needed to be redone so we can make sure to keep that water outside the wall system. Okay, so
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, Nat.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
So all the while while we're working with an engineer, or your contractor's working with your engineer, as the engineer is in design, the contractor's working through all the logistics. So many of these are going to have cost impacts. How we're going to manage safety, how we're going to manage quality, how we're going to move through the project in an efficient manner while minimizing footprint, and how are we going to communicate? And each client is different. We've got some that are going to be, we really only want you to post notifications at the elevator. Some are going to be, we want you on a weekly call presenting to the entire community. It's just different with everybody, and each project is different from each one of these 4 categories when we're planning logistics. So when we're talking about safety, it's not only the safety of the residents, it's the safety of the workers as well. We need to make sure that we're delineating our workspace from pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic. So we're going to do that. Your contractor should do that in a number of ways. PPE, personal protective equipment, vesting, making sure that anybody who is management on site or can communicate with residents or clients is clearly identified. Our site utilization plan, so we can visually show clients exactly where we're going to be staging material, where they can expect to either lose some area of parking or some grass area where we can potentially store, where we can store material on site. Traffic control and parking plan. This has to be communicated so that people know exactly where they can be traveling, whether that's coming in and out of the building on foot or in vehicles. And then last is the controlled access zone. CAZs are very common tools that we use to make sure that, you know, pets, kids, any pedestrians, people that might be curious about projects, stay out of the work zone. And you're typically going to see this around any scaffolding or excavation areas to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. So all of the while, these have cost impacts. See. First, what you're going to see here is the site utilization plan. This is how we communicate to the residents, to the boards, to management on site or management off site, where we're going to be storing material. In this particular project, we had a really specific laydown area that we knew we had to use because we met with the fire department to make sure that our plan was going to agree with their path of travel should they have an emergency on site. So our first task was, okay, is this going to be safe for any emergencies? And we cleared that with the fire department. And then secondarily, after we had it approved through them, we had it approved through the HOA in this case. In this area is completely fenced off. In this scenario, we had to replace all of the sod because we knew we were going to have a lot of equipment coming in and out of that area. And so we shut the sprinklers off. We had a budget set up for sod replacement before demobilization. So it was a really good area for us to utilize. Unfortunately, it did take a little bit of pet area away from the community, but it was an agreeable plan by the time we were done with it. How your contractor is going to access the building is very important. This is it's an overlaid picture. That person is not actually 10 feet tall. It's just an example of a lift being used on site. This was obviously before we mobilized, and we just wanted to give the community an example. So we did a little bit of cost analysis on what's going to be most efficient for this particular project for the condition that's shown here. So we had some guardrail attachment issues. Fortunately, we did not have to get really into the building envelope wrapping around the sides of that tower that you see there. So we were able to address this work off of a lift. And what this is going to illustrate to the client is, okay, you can expect to see a lift on site when we're addressing this work. We'll clearly mark it off with cones, and anytime we're blocking a garage entrance, we're going to make sure that we have it blocked on both sides. So it's very important that we are contemplating that. Excuse me. They all have cost implications, how we're going to access through the project as we move all the way around it. So just different ways to think about how we're going to access it and the safety of all those involved. Okay, moving on to quality. A couple different ways to manage quality. For us, we find that this is most successful. Obviously, on-site supervision, it's a multitude of individuals that are our contractor, KRC's representatives, but if you're using another contractor, they should have, on a major project, at least a few guys on site all the time to manage their quality, because a lot of times that's the reason that your contractor's there in the first place. Somebody didn't manage quality properly the first time. So they're going to be conducting inspections, going through their checklist. They should have a QA/QC matrix put together prior to any of the work starting. Once their submittals are done through the engineer, they're going to be getting observation reports from the engineer more than likely, and they're going to be photo documenting everything. And what we like to use is Procore. You guys have probably heard of this, but it's one of the top tools to use for construction management. It allows all the parties involved to communicate very, very fluidly. So any meeting minutes are going to be taken through Procore. They're going to be accessible at all times. The schedule, 3-week look ahead. So it's a really good tool. Any of your contractors should be using that or something similar because it's a very successful project management tool. And then moving into schedule, Natalie showed you a pre-construction schedule a little bit earlier. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you are going to be going through either a special assessment or a loan on your property for some of this work, make sure that your contractor is capturing that in the pre-construction schedule. A lot of times they're not sure how long that loan process is going to take, or if we do have a capital investment, how quickly those funds are going to become available. That needs to be identified in the pre-con schedule. For this particular example, this is the CPM once construction starts, and this is what we put together before mobilization. It's going to outline step by step what needs to take place. We'll have our phasing plan in there showing the community how we're going to move through the entire project and kind of a timeline associated with each one of those phases. And then the 3-week look ahead, which is a little bit more user friendly from a layman's standpoint. If you need to communicate with your clients, it's a simpler version of the CPM, and it's easier visually to understand. And people usually get their questions answered by just taking a look at that.
So obviously, when you're working where people are living, and a lot of people are working out of their homes these days as well, it's important to know what they're going to expect. These can all have cost implications if you don't have a good communication plan around it, because it can halt the project or delay it. So do people need to remove outdoor items from their decks and balconies? Do they need to keep their windows and doors closed? Are they going to have loud construction noise, garage interruptions? Where are the crews going to be working? And so at Kennedy Richter, we put together a really robust communication plan. And so it starts really with the community association manager and the board of directors. We meet bi-weekly for what are called OEC meetings, owner, engineer, and contractor meetings. Those are bi-weekly during the planning process. It keeps it transparent, keeps it moving forward when decisions need to be made. It's a great forum for that. Once construction starts, those move to weekly. We keep a meeting agenda. We also keep meeting minutes. Are we going to have to do door postings? Like Ryan said, some people just like it at the elevator. Some people want every individual unit posted. Who's doing that? Honestly, it shouldn't be your community association manager. They've got a lot of other day-to-day activities to manage. It should be your contractor. Your contractor should be available for monthly HOA meetings. They should be writing the email blast for the community association manager to send out. A series of town hall meetings is so important. It sets expectations and aligns everyone. And then, as Ryan mentioned, you need a project team on site. A project of this scope really needs at least 3 people, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And those are your boots on the ground. Those are the people that residents can tap on their shoulder. They should have their emails. They should have their cell phone numbers, but they should be really spearheading the communication once the project gets started. So we know that as boards, you've got declarations and you've got things that you have to adhere to. And one of those things is the fiduciary responsibility. If you go through pre-construction and you hire a reputable general contractor, they should be fulfilling this fiduciary responsibility for you. They should competitively and transparently be going out to bid on every single scope. They should also be working with you to plan a contingency to safeguard against the unexpected. And so Ryan's just going to briefly talk about how we bid out each scope of work.
Yeah, so using Sunny Haven as an example again, we knew we had a number of scopes that we had to focus on. So we're not going out to jack of all trades type of contractors. We're going to very trade specific contractors. For the stone and the flashing, we can go to kind of the same contractor for just that scope. When we start talking about, siding integration, roofing integration, any coping cap metals that need to be done, those are all different subcontractors. We're going to make sure that we're going out to a minimum and getting bid coverage on a minimum of 3 per trade, per scope. So we'll take all of that. We put together a bid form after our takeoffs are done, send it out to market. So we know the people that are working specifically in occupied space, because it's completely different than greenfield construction. And that's what a lot of people struggle to understand when you're bidding it out to just everyday contractors. If they don't have experience in occupied environment, if they don't understand how much impact some of that vehicular traffic that we saw with that lift picture, people coming in and out of that garage, and some of the flaggers we're going to have on both sides of that garage, if they don't understand how that's going to slow down pace, then you're going to get some risky pricing from them. So we understand that. We're going out to trade partners that are frequently working in occupied space, making sure that we have a minimum of 3 bids per trade. And then after we receive their bids, we're leveling those. So we'll go through our bid form, see what they have filled out, and see if they're missing anything, making sure that their timeline aligns with ours, because we've put together the CPM on the project and we've shared that with them. Making sure that we have all of our T's crossed, I's dotted, and making sure that it is a complete and responsible number. And at the end of the day, we'll assemble what we think is the best package for the client and fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities, and then present that. When we do present pricing, when your contractor presents pricing, it should be a full project approach. It should be, a full estimate, a full proposal, the schedule, the phasing plan, the site utilization plan, all of it packaged together so that it's clearly communicated of, what's about to happen on the project.
Bonus question. All right, get ready. Got some fast typers. What are 2 important project logistics? We just told you 4. We're only asking for 2. You know what? If somebody's got all 4, though, I'll give a gift card for that, too. Let me know when we've got a winner. Anybody?
Mark West was close. He's got one of them with quality and meetings.
Okay.
Communication and budget. Coming in from Angela.
Close. Put 2 of those last ones together.
Communication and meetings. Oh, budget and quality. There we go.
All right, we'll give it to them. Who was it?
That was Mark West. Great job, everyone.
Okay. So yeah, it was safety, quality, schedule, and communication. But you're right. We did throw in cost and budget in there. So, all right, we'll make sure you get a gift card.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to add, sorry, Nat, to go back to the bid leveling, because I did see a contingency question earlier. When we are presenting final pricing, we do want to make sure that we are identifying what that contingency is. And what we like to do is to make sure that's an owner-controlled contingency. So it's recommendation from the engineer, from the contractor stating, okay, we think for building envelope project, and we see some efflorescence on site, but we don't see, there's no stone falling off the building. In some of the intrusive testing we've done, we've seen minimal damage to the exterior sheathing. Let's just recommend 10% contingency for this project. We'll identify that below the line, so it's not included in our contract. It would be owner controlled. It's just a budget they set aside. And if they need it, then the contractor would then show a change estimate for the work and then change order it into the contract once it's been executed by the client. So yes, we do identify contingency when we are doing our final pricing presentation to the client.
Thanks, Brian. So once you've hired your team, you've prioritized the repairs and set the budget. We've value analyzed the repairs to say, all right, how can we save some dollars, maybe get more work done? The engineers put pen to paper. They've put the design on paper, the specifications on how the work needs to go into place. We've planned the project logistics, so the quality, safety, communication, and schedule. We've gone out to market to fulfill a fiduciary responsibility. At that point, as Ryan mentioned, it's time to present the entire project plan to the board for approval. And hopefully, we're ready to start work. But the great thing about pre-construction, at least if you do it with Kennedy Richter Construction, is you've got 2 options at the end of pre-construction. So you can either say, hey, looks great, let's start the work. And typically, your contractor will credit back a portion of the pre-construction costs. Or you also have the right to say, you know what, we're going to delay the project. Or maybe your vote didn't pass for your assessment. Or maybe you want to go and take this project plan and get other bids. You can do that. At that time, you would just compensate your general contractor for pre-construction costs. And usually those are anywhere from $3,500 to $10,000 a month. And typically we usually put a cap in there as well so that it's not just, an endless running clock. It is important to note, though, that engineering fees are typically not credited back. They are putting a design together. Engineers sell their time. They're leaving you with a work product that's yours at the end of the day. And so you wouldn't expect to have any fees credited back from the engineer. Bonus question. All right. When should you use pre-construction? We gave you a list at the beginning. Michelle and Jack, I can't see the chat, so you'll have to use your best.
I like this answer. Anytime. Jamie says large projects.
I like large projects. Yep. All right. Awesome.
All right, we've got Jamie down for 2. Brenda came in with construction defect. Another good
Oh, that was good. That's also an answer. Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So anytime you've got a scope undefined, long list of deferred maintenance projects, you're getting a loan or a special assessment, or you've got a large complex project or a construction defect repair project. So I really hope that you guys can see what tremendous value just really kind of pausing and taking time to plan a project can provide. The risk is so minimum on going through a process like this. If you're working with a good GC and an engineer, it's going to be a transparent planning process. You're going to focus on priority work that's within your budget. We're going to have a no stone unturned approach. So we're reducing the risk of change orders, and we're planning for those unknowns with a contingency. So we're being responsible, and you're going to be left with a project that's functional and financially viable. And you're going to be left with a plan that works towards minimizing resident and tenant impact. So those are the benefits. That is the class. I think we can open it up to questions. Maybe if I stop sharing my screen, I can see those.
And I'm happy to read them to you, Natalie. Ryan, first want to say thank you very much. Very informative class. And I know across our portfolio, we've tackled some very large and complex projects. So I know this resonated with the team. Throughout your remarks, we did receive a few questions, and I tried to give them a thumbs up as they came in so that I could quickly scroll back to them. The first, you guys probably don't have an answer to, but I'd be curious just to hear your thoughts on maybe how some of these things happen during original construction. But the question is, how did Sunny Haven pass final building inspection and get a certificate of occupancy? Any thoughts on how, some of those major life safety issues could have slipped through the inspection process?
Very easily. No. Unfortunately, it's not the city inspector's job to inspect quality. Yes, it is their responsibility to look for life safety items, but those two particular, like for example, the awning and the guardrail attachments, you've got rough framing that happens at one point during the project, and then when the exterior guardrails or awnings are installed, it's pretty far along. So those happen at two different times, and it would have been too difficult for the city inspector to inspect how those bolts were going into the building and what they were physically hitting. So they should have been hitting some wood structural members. They weren't, but at the end of the day, any city inspector or city building department is indemnable, so they cannot be sued. They're not held to the same standards that the builders are when they're trying to manage quality. So we see it happens, so frequently that anytime we have a construction defect problem, that's usually the client's first question is, how did these buildings pass inspection? So yeah. It happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, great answer there. So our next question, and we are still accepting questions, so by all means, feel free to join in on the fun here. Please provide your definition of scope creep.
Sure. Scope creep happens when sometimes when you have two particular scopes that are either close in proximity to each other, or you've got a design firm that is not focused on the priorities and tries to expand the design scope a little bit. So anytime that happens, you saw the steps that we take. We go through the prioritization. From there, the client draws a line in the sand, for lack of a better term. Once that line in the sand is drawn, that is what the engineer is supposed to design. We've seen in the past where we have engineers that are looking at, let's say it's head flashings around windows, but pretty close in proximity to that, they've got a corbel just above it on a gable that they're going to try to address. Well, that's not in scope. So the scope creep is an engineer or a contractor addressing more than they should have, and more that was intended by the client originally. So it's just additional scope added.
Yeah, a really good answer there, Ryan. So thanks for that. Our next question, and I think you guys addressed this later in your remarks, but was in the pre-construction budget, do you typically add in contingency for potential change orders?
Yeah, we answered that one.
Yep. Next up was really great information. Thank you. What sets KRC apart and differentiates KRC from other general contractors in the space?
Yeah, I think what sets us apart is that we're owner operated, but our owners have just really diverse backgrounds. Paul Kennedy is a registered engineer and architect, and Patrick Richter is a general contractor, and they actually met on a job site, and it wasn't going great. They worked for different companies, and they were like trying to do the right thing, and they were like, you know what? Let's just start our own company. Let's put the client first, and let's just focus on one good outcome after the next. And so they really built this company on doing that. And I think that's why so many community association managers and HOA communities pick up the phone and continue to call us, because they just know that we're going to have the careful thought, the creativity. We're going to put a plan in place, and we're just going to deliver one good outcome after the next safely and communicatively. So at least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that a little bit, Natalie. I think our willingness to approach projects in a different way. So we're willing to go enter into multitude of different types of contracts. We've done open book contracts with our clients, so cost plus contracts, where we're going to show them every cost on the job, and all they have to, they're going to incur that cost in the markup. And it's not really something you see commonly in this marketplace. So it's a kind of a fresh version, an honest version of doing the work. Now, keep in mind when we do have different contracts, one party is going to bear more risk than the other, but I think the opportunity to engage in work using different contract options is something that's unique.
Yes, great differentiators. We have another question here. Are you vendor smart compliant?
Yes.
Easy enough. I believe that brings us to the end of our questions. I do want to remind anybody on the call who is CAI certified in any capacity, if you'd like continuing education, please scroll up in the chat, give me a thumbs up on that comment, or send me a separate email. We want to make sure you get credit for attending this evening. Outside of that, I will, I guess, do one more ask to see if there's anything else anybody's curious about, would like to ask of these two experts while we've got them on the phone. Otherwise, we can wrap up just a little bit early this evening. I see silence in the chat. So I think we've sufficiently addressed everybody's comments. Again, I really appreciate the thorough presentation, great information. Any closing remarks from you two?
Just thank you guys for having us, and thanks for everybody who attended and wants to learn more. If you ever need us, we are a resource, and we're here to answer questions. And just Michelle and Jack, thanks for putting this together, and thank you, Worth Ross.
Yeah,
Thank
you guys for joining. And just a reminder, yes, this presentation will be posted to our YouTube channel. We'll distribute a link coming out of this, and then scroll back through the chat to get those credentials issued. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Oh, I was just going to make a note, Marquest, if you wanted to give a thumbs up on Jack's chat. Oh, for submitting names. Okay, so I think those are for continued education credits.
Correct.
Jack,
Yep.
if you see those names in there.
Yep, I'll make sure to go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Natalie and Ryan. This was awesome, and we're excited to continue to work with you guys in the future.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.